I'm going to ask you to take a look at 6 different paintings and just make a note, mental note, if you like, who you think the artists are, or indeed the art movement. A clue is that, with one exception, they're all from the late to earlier 20th century, that sort of 1900s on and that sort of thing. I've got these all in a book, or a couple of books. I'm going to put them in front of you in a moment, so it'll only take a moment. Let's see how you get on with this. Here comes the first one. Let's see if I can get this under here. All right, I've hidden off other bits of information and paintings here, but I wonder if you could recognize who might have done that. I'll bring up the second one in a second. Here comes the second one. And who, I wonder, do you think might have made that picture? On to the third one. Here we go. That scene. Who is that artist, I wonder? I wonder if you know that. I have a different book here for this one. What about who might have done that? Okay, that was the fourth one. I have 2 pictures now. Let me get these showing to you. There's this one. And remember, you know, if you don't know the actual artist, maybe you've got an idea of the art movement or the ism on that. So those were the 6 pictures, just by way of turning over the old grey matter. And I wonder who you thought might have been the artists. You don't need to put it up on chat or anything. On this virtual way of teaching, where we face to face, you might be putting your hands up at the back of the class, but not on this occasion. So who might we be talking about? I'm trying to remember the order. Toulouse-Lautrec, maybe? Renoir? I don't know if you've got any of these. Goya? He was the one who was not from the early 20th century. And I can't remember exactly which way around, but there were sort of Fauvist paintings at the end. There's Fauvist-like paintings. I wonder if any of you got any of those. Because if you did, you were all wrong. They are all, in fact, from the hand of Pablo Picasso. And this brings me really into what this session is all about, because I'd like to explain how those pictures relate to today's painting that we're about to embark on. Pablo Picasso, it's attributed to him, lots of things are attributed to him, and I don't know how many of them are true, but that he once said, good artists copy, great artists steal. Good artists copy, great artists steal. So this is my contention. If it's good enough for Pablo Picasso to learn or to even steal from other artists, I believe it's good enough for us. I hope you agree with me. Don't you think so? That we can learn from other artists. We can even steal from other artists. So in today's session, I'm to learn, and maybe even to steal, from the work of Edward Wesson, an English watercolorist Born in 1910, died at the age of 73 in 1983. Lived primarily in Kent in the southeast of England, but painted all over the world. So today's session is about learning from Edward Wesson. We're not going to actually copy an Edward Wesson. We're going, well, we are and we're not. Let me explain that in just a moment, but not a direct copy. So these pictures I've got here were ones that were put up by Lois on the screens, on Eventbrite or on the Watermills blogs and so forth. And they're all paintings by Edward Wesson, the English watercolorist, who I've long been an admirer of, and so have many other artists. I've admired very much how he can simplify a scene, how he imbues it with boldness, and I've just been intrigued by the way he uses his brush to make the marks that he does on the paper. All of these things, in some way, we will attempt to copy or even steal from Edward Wesson today. Okay, I'll come back to that in just a moment. And I would like to explain briefly something about the materials and the equipment that I'm using. So let's deal with that bit by bit. It won't take long, but for those of you who are new to this, this might be quite useful. I'm using a rag content watercolor paper. So it's a good quality watercolor paper, unlike say something like cartridge paper or some other form of drawing paper. So this is in fact Sanders Sanders paper, but there's lots of other good makes. Lots of Arches is another good make I like to use sometimes. So this is 300 grams per square meter. That's the weight of the paper, or 140 pounds. And it's a surface which is known as cold pressed or not, NOT. You basically have three types of surface. You've got a very rough surface, which is known as rough, and a very smooth one, which is known normally as hot pressed. And something in between the two is not or cold pressed. So the paper is a rag content paper, and that's what I will always attempt to use when I'm doing watercolor painting. If you're working in a sketchbook, and for instance, and your paper isn't as good a quality for watercolor as that, well, then that's fine. I do a lot of that, but that's fine. So let's look at the paints very briefly. This is my palette here. I squeezed these professional artist quality paints in here. They're mostly Winsor & Newton. I've got one or two others here. I won't go through each color now, but I will mention them during the course of the session. And indeed, if anybody wants to know more about that, please ask me, or indeed look on the information that Lois put out, and I put a picture of these. Suffice to say that they're all professional artist quality paints. Oh, I also quite often use a tube of this white gouache. I don't think I'm going to be doing so today, but that's something I always take around with me. I do have other colors, of course, and when I go traveling, I throw lots of tubes of paint into a plastic box and take them with me. But these are the main colors that I use. And lastly, something about the brushes. These are the brushes that I tend to use. I won't necessarily be using all of them today, but the largest one is a squirrel-haired mop brush. The idea is that it holds water very well, and it also goes to a point. This is a very similar brush that I quite often use. It's an imitation squirrel brush. This one is a 1 inch, and this one's about the same sort of size. I've got a smaller version of a squirrel mop brush here. It's a little one that I may be using today. I have got a a rigger, which is in synthetic, I think. And the last two brushes are, this is a sword brush, which is also squirrel, but imitation squirrel I seem to be using more and more now, is great and cheaper. And I will definitely be using this today, so we'll talk about that more. And lastly, I take this with me. It's the cheapest children's brush that I could get hold of, and I took a pair of scissors to it and gave it a really bad haircut. I don't know whether I'm using that today, but another time. So those are the materials and the equipment. My paper is stuck down with masking tape here, and it's a rag contact paper, the paints I've mentioned, and the brushes. A quick word on the process, the teaching method that I'll be using here, and then we'll be able to get on with this. I think with almost every one of these sessions that I've been doing with the watermill, and we've been doing them now for quite a long time, certainly over all the lockdowns, I've broken the painting into 4 steps. Sometimes you could call it 5, but 4 main steps. And the first is drawing. Usually I use a pencil, but quite often a pen. The first is making a drawing. The second is creating a wash. Then the third is putting more colors down, the majority of the other colors down, including shadows and that sort of thing. And then finally, the last stage is just dealing with any details that need to pull the whole painting together. So I will talk about each of these steps, these 4 steps, beginning now. Now, as Lois said, that after each of these steps, I'll stop, I'll let you catch up, ask any questions, and hopefully you're not going to be rushed throughout the whole of this process in doing this painting. So always there's some kind of a source, usually a source photograph that we work for in this case. Well, I looked around for something that wasn't one of these Wesson paintings, because as I said, I don't want to actually copy a Wesson directly. And in fact, what I found was a Wesson painting, but this one, which is different in a number of ways from what we might set out to do. It's clearly a painting done by him in the autumn season. And in fact, he has used a pen, sort of like this sort of pen. He must have used a pen like that to do the drawing, and probably put the paint on afterwards, which is fine. I draw like that probably most of the time, actually. But I thought what we'd do is we would take this scene, which, if you think about it, isn't really very different. We're talking about a few trees in the foreground, some large sky, and some distant trees or some distant part of the landscape. So I reckon, looking through Edward Wesson's paintings, that he returned many times to the same spots to paint in many different seasons. So what we're going to do is take this as an idea and then convert it into a snow scene. I'm very happy if, for instance, you have got this picture or any of the other pictures and you think, I'm going to actually copy that one, because I want to be a great artist. That's just fine, because what we'll do as this unfolds is we're going to be sort of thinking about the way that Edward Wesson might have looked at images and might have made his marks on the page. So in fact, what we'll end up with here, whatever that might look like, probably isn't going to be very different from that. It's just tweaked it a little bit. I just thought rather than absolutely copy straight off one of his paintings, we go at it at a slight angle. Okay, so that is going to be what I'm going to use for my painting. So that is my source image that I'm going to be using. Now, when I talked about the first step being drawing, and I talked about it, maybe you could consider this to be 5 steps. My reason for saying that is because contained within this step, I mean, if I were to make it 5 steps, I would say the first step is think about your subject and the composition. So, but I tend to bunch that whole lot together. So the composition, I mentioned there's a big sky here, which makes me think that we're probably in East Anglia, somewhere in the east of our country, England. There's a big sky here. We've got a strong foreground, and then a suggestion of the distance and the middle ground, the distance being this hill in the background. So I'm going to bring all of that in to making this painting, but have to think differently about how we're going to paint the colors. This is a lovely painting. It's really strong, as are many of his paintings. It's simple, a lot of boldness in his way he makes the marks, a lot of boldness in his values, that being the dark, the light against the dark, and vice versa. He's not frightened to be strong with his values, as you can see in this. And someone in one of the responses to some social media advertising that the Watermill were doing talked about how this is a little bit how on a certain snowy day and you half close your eyes, you get this sort of glare of dark and light. And of course, we need to make up our minds, or you need to make up your minds, exactly what kind of overall snowy day this is going to be. Is it going to be a very bright day like that, strong colors, or is it going to be more subdued like that? And hopefully you'll come up with your own ideas how to do that, or you might find that your painting leads you in a direction that you weren't quite sure you wanted to, you knew you were going, but you're going to work with it. So here we are. So let's deal with the drawing at this stage. I'm using a soft pencil. The marks are made on here. I may end up getting rid of later on, but they're going to be more or less covered with the paint. And I will also make my marks a little bit heavier than I might normally do for myself, so that you are able to see what I'm doing here. First step, the drawing, the composition. So big sky. So I think I'll take my horizon down to about this sort of level here, something like that. Gives me plenty of sky, but I also want to have room for the foreground. Yeah, so we'll do something like that, see how that goes. So I know I'm going to work along that sort of line. And these two trees are pretty dominant, as is this hedgerow here. So and the other thing is, you just need to think, where is your point of view as the observer of this scene? And that little bit I'll explain to you in the drawing here. Yeah, depending on how you draw this little bit here will depend on whether you are looking right down on it, as in a bird's eye view, or you're looking up at it as a snail's view. So I'm going to probably put this hedge here, this not a hedge, it's a ditch of some kind. I'll probably take it there and then come up something like that, and its angle is going to be something like that. Yeah, that's how I'll go for that. And looking at the rest of it, I'll sweep around here. It's going to be another rise here with a tree. I'll come back to where I'm going to put that tree in a moment. So my point of view, my eye level is something like that. I can't see beyond, I can't see above it, which I would do if I were a bird, and but I'm restricted. If I were a snail, then I'd have a completely different view. So let's just see what I'm going to do here. Let's put I'm going to put a tree, something like that there. That's, I quite like. I'll use his upright tree, but I'll take this tree off at a bit of an angle. Yeah, it's quite nice, off at an angle, and it's a bigger tree. I don't need to put in the branches. I've given some thickness to the actual trunk and one or two branches, and you'll see why when I pop in my washes. So I've got that. I'm going to there's going to be something happening here tree wise. Yeah, and this one over here, which compositionally kind of balances off the weight of that side, left-hand side. I'm going to put that up there for me, some sort of tree. Again, I don't need to draw anything in. I'm going to be using the brush mostly for drawing. Now we've got things happening in the back here. Some sort of, there's a skyline at the back there, which I might just indicate. I'll take it up there a wee bit, and there's some sort of hedge there. Decisions will be, I'll make decisions later on as to how many of these sorts of things I put in. And remember, of course, this is an autumn scene with leaves on the trees. We're going pretty much without leaves on the trees. Okay, now before I just let you work on that a bit more, and I should have said this at the start, please draw and paint along with me. Whenever you feel happy to get going. But if I could just show you that I did do a practice painting of this. And so I think you'll see, I've been through this, I've looked at it. Interestingly enough, how much sky did I give? Pretty much the same, really. So I have made little marks, drawn these in here, but in fact, I've actually put most of them in later on, depending on how I thought the composition was going. Right, that's the first step done. Now step 2 is washes. This will be a fairly simple stage, but a really important one, because it is what we do, especially on this step, which dictates the kind of light and the atmospheric feel of the painting so much. So I'm going to have to move this out of the way. Let's see if I can. Can I put it somewhere? Yeah, I'll put it there for the moment, but I'm going to have to shift that because I'm about to get everything very wet. So let's start putting some wash on here. I must make sure I don't copy this because it's giving me all the wrong information, this autumnal scene. We're looking at one of the things about snow lying down is that it so much tends to flatten out, particularly when it's newly fallen, and especially if the sky is snow laden. It flattens out so much that we would normally see in a landscape like this. So we've just got to bear that in mind. I'm going to use this big brush, some sort of a large brush for dealing with this, and I'm going to make this paper pretty wet with colors flowing into each other if necessary. It is. I'm looking for what are the lightest colors in the scene that I'm painting. If there are some where there is a white or very high light or something like that, then if it's possible, leave that the paper. But I'm not going to worry about that too much. Not for this sort of a painting. I'm more interested in getting an overall flatness. So I'm picking up water in my brush, and I'm going to start with the sky. By the way, I'm working flat on a board here so that it makes it a little easier for you to see what I'm painting. Normally, I paint on in upright position with something on an easel, but it matters not. Let's keep him in view for a bit. Right, so I've got lots of water in here. And that is such an important ingredient in a watercolor. I mean, that's why they call it watercolor. And the colors that I'll start off with, in my palette, I've got 3 blues. This is cerulean, which is the coolest, greenest of the blues. Then cobalt, which is sort of the middle of the blues I've got. And then I've got French ultramarine blue, which is the reddest, warmest, purplish of the blues. I'm going to put in a cooler blue into the sky, which is this cerulean. I'm also going to drop in some yellow to the scene. This is my practice painting. Can you see I've sort of put some yellow in there? And for that, I'll use this color, which is yellow ochre, but equally, you could use this one, which is raw sienna. Raw sienna is very slightly warmer, but they're very similar in many ways. Raw sienna or yellow ochre. I'm not going to put in any of these yellows I've got here. I'll talk about these yellows later on. And if I do, if you say you don't have a yellow ochre or a raw sienna, then maybe just be a little bit sparing with the color you do put in. I don't know, maybe lemon yellow or something. So here we are. I'm picking up cerulean. Let's get this so you can see it a bit better. I'm picking up a cerulean blue here, and I'm going to paint that around. I don't mind it going over the trees, but I'm quite keen to have a little bit of yellow. I like this bit of light that Edward Wesson's got in here on the trees. He's got it a little bit, and it's emphasized by the shadowy spot. So what I'll do is I'll leave a couple of gaps of the blue and then come in with some yellow. So here we are. I've got lots of blue. I can make it stronger on the paper by adding blue to it. In fact, I'm going to grey that down ever so slightly. That blue is just a little bit too bouncy, really, for me. So if I put a tiny little bit of something red, say I've got a light red here, or a little bit of burnt umber here, burnt sienna here, or some sort, so just a little bit of red in there, not much. If you put too much, it will go brown. What I've done is I've grayed it down. Can you see the difference between these two? That was without, and that is with. Just gray it down a little bit and just pop that in here. I said I'm going to leave something around the tree and just in here and take that down. This can come as far down as you want, really. Let's okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit of this yellow ochre, just drop it down here. As light as you can with this. It's quite a light touch for this sort of snow scene. We can always come in darker. So I put a bit of yellow there. I'm going to make that a bit stronger here, darkness wise. So let's go back and add a little bit of that light red or one of those sorts of reds, make it a bit stronger. That's careful I don't go too brown, and just put in something here. If these are, or if they're all running to each other, that's just fine. And here, just put in something like that. So I've kind of left a little bit of the tree there. Okay, that's taken it down across the painting, but I'm going to bring, I'm going to get rid of this picture just for a moment. I'm going to bring that down over the snow. I don't want the snow to be the white of the paper, but I don't want it to be as blue as the sky. So let's just go to this, add some water, take it down here a little bit. Here we go. That's topped it down there. And you may think, oh gosh, that's I thought we were doing snow scene. Shouldn't we have white snow? Well,
can you say what colours have you used for the sky again, please, Mike?
I've used cerulean blue. I started off with. Remember, I thought, well, that's a little bit too bright blue, so I added something red to it. I've used a light red, but it could have been a burnt sienna, or could have been even a little bit of these reds that I'll talk about shortly. And that was the idea, was to gray it, just to gray it down a little bit. And I put that down on here, and I put it over here. And I decided that I'd drop in some yellow, little bit of yellow ochre here, put that in. I went back and made this a bit darker, and then I sort of lightened up and brought it over the whole thing. And if there are little gaps showing in it, then that's not a problem at all. If you look at this Edward Wesson here, he's got lots of little gaps showing. You don't feel you have to paint it as if it were your living room wall. Little bits of gaps. He's just dropped all sorts of colors in there. So I'm happy with that as my wash. And I've only used 1, 2, 3 colors there, really, just put them in at the moment. It's quite a sort of flat, regular, sort of flat tonally set of washes here, all in keeping with the flatness that I spoke about that we often get when there is snow lying on the ground. So it's over to you now, everybody, on that. Let me know how you're getting on. What you will need to do, and I'll do it with mine in just a moment, is dry this. We want this to be bone dry before we go on to the third step. So I'm going to use a hairdryer to get this dry. If you're in a part of the world where the sun is shining, you might find that might help you. But I'm certainly going for a hairdryer.
Did you wet the paper first?
No, I didn't. But
Oh.
I chucked a lot of water and paint around, so it, in effect, wetted itself. One of the reasons I didn't is because here, for instance, it so happens that I've actually put no paint on this, so I've got a hard edge. you know, that might prove useful. If you go back to this picture of Weston, so I'm trying to paint like Weston, remember, and can you see here that there are various little bits of paper that might have not been painted on, been left out. He painted very quickly, very simply, and I'm leaving that to see what would happen. If I don't like it, I can do something about it later. But I painted it quickly, and I let it run into itself in some places, and others not so much. Okay, I'm going to dry this with my hairdryer, and let you all crack on with that for a moment. I'm going to move now towards the step 3, the third of our 4 steps. And this is where we start to put a lot more color, or at least whatever colors we feel we do need to put down, a lot more color into the painting that we've worked on. This, what we've put in here, is very much about the lightest colors. We want, there's a lot of this that we won't paint over because we want to use the light that is already there. So we're going to start working other colors in here, and that will include, let me get my practice painting out again, that will include the shadows that I put in down here. We're going to do an awful lot of that, and just ending up with details that needed to put it together. So I don't want to do anything more to the sky. With a bit of luck, the sky is going to be good. That will work for us fine. Nothing stopped me later on doing something to sky, but I'm going to try not to do anything to the sky. I do need to put in, let's get back to this picture. I do need to put in some distant hill here. I think that's quite nice to have that in, this distance, which will be a sort of very, very muted bluey mauve sort of color, I guess. And I need to make some paintings about what's going on in the middle distance, just in front of that distant hill. So I think what I'll do first of all is I'll just sweep in some distance there, because that's a relatively simple thing to do, and then we'll move on from there. My distant hills are going to go here, and what I'm going to do is to have them a little bit stronger here and getting a little bit weaker here on that one, just on that line. So use pretty much any brush I like. Let's go from my little smaller mop brush here, and I will bring in some cobalt. Let's just try this out and see how it looks. A bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of this red. I've got 2 reds here. This more orangey red is a Windsor red, but cadmium red or something like that, even a more orangey vermilion would be acceptable. But the point is that my 2 reds, one is orange, is yellow heavy, and one is blue heavy, extra colors. So in this red, it works itself out as looking more orangey, especially if you put it next to this crimson, which looks a little more purpley. So I wanted to get a distant hills here, and I really wanted to be quite faint. Remember, we're a sort of flat, snowy scene here. So let's pick up a little bit of the Windsor red. Okay, now is that too warm? Is that too red, I wonder? In my practice painting, I obviously did make it quite red. So Okay, I'm going to put that. Remember, when watercolors dry, they always go lighter. So let's just pop that down here, and take it. I said I wanted this to be a bit lighter down here, so I'm going to add some water to that and just let it sort of flow in a bit. Yeah, there's no detail in those distant hills there at all. Now I'm wanting to put some trees in front at the moment, but I'm conscious that this is very wet. Okay, so if I were to drop in other colors here, then it would just start spreading wherever I put that mauve. So let's see if we can pop some other colors in. Might be useful. I talked about liking the way Wesson had done these trees here, and he's done them here as well. I don't know if you realize that the light is coming from two different directions. In this autumnal scene, it's coming from the right to the left. And so that shadow there is actually cast by this tree here and other trees. But in this scene, it's coming the other way. And in fact, I'm going to have it coming from left to right on this one. Although sometimes in a snow scene, it's a bit difficult to tell. So going back to this tree, I'm going to pick up a little bit of my yellow ochre and just take that down here, a little bit there. That will all dry because that will help me a little bit, maybe get some light on it. And where am I going to go next?
Sorry, Mike, what was the background color? The red, and it looks like some kind of blue.
I made that out of cobalt blue and a little bit of my Windsor red, my lighter red, just a little bit.
My cobalt blue's completely gone. Shall I just use aquamarine?
Yeah, you can use any blue. You could use the cerulean if you wanted to. I'm just trying to get a distant mauvey bluey color to that. Okay, yeah, you could use that, your aquamarine. Yeah, try another color, but keep it light. Doesn't need to be very strong. And I also was showing you how you could create the illusion a little bit that this is going off into the distance by just dropping in some water to you, so it's a lighter mixture. I don't know if you can see that's different from that. Just in that small area, we see there's some sort of suggestion of hills going into the distance or something of that nature. And then I dropped in some of this color here. Actually, I had meant to put that in when I did the wash, but it doesn't matter.
Why did you change the direction of the light? I mean, instead of coming from the right, it's coming from the left. And this, why?
Well, I had a choice. That painting is coming from the right. That's from the left, and I just want to change things from this painting. Gotcha. Okay, I'm trying to avoid being drawn into this painting.
Okay.
Okay, and I mean, it's not a very good reason for it, but it's the reason I think I must have used in the back of my head. Yeah, okay, so what's happening here is that this is still a little bit wet here, and I'm wanting to put in. Can you see in my practice that I've got these trees very much in the distance. They're hardly registering at all, and I'm wondering to know how I can get that sort of effect of them hardly registering. And this is, I think, the way I'll do it. I'm going to, how's this doing? I'm going to wet with just water, this area, just a little bit above the horizon. That's only water. I could have got this spray and sprayed it, but I didn't think I needed to go to that extent. I didn't need to wet all of this just at the moment. I've just popped in some water there, and that's soaking into this rag paper here, and I'm going to pop in some colors. So let's see these trees here. Now I'll make them slightly. Let's go back to my cobalt, mix that with something that's on here. A little bit of cobalt on here, and you'll find that when you're doing a painting like this, that well, first of all, no two artists are going to have all the same colors. So whoever's showing you paintings, they'll have different colors to a point. And you'll also find that you can achieve lots of what I'm talking about by using different colors from me. But I've gone for, I've got that cobalt blue. I popped that into where some of that yellow ochre was. And if I drop that there, where it touches the water, it just softens a little bit. I don't know whether that's going to be too much. Whilst I'm at that, I'm going to throw in some other colors. Go back to this yellow ochre, and I'm going to put a yellow in here, and maybe something like that here. Do I want that? Okay, so this is losing itself in the paint. I'm just going to come out and wipe that down a little bit. And whilst these are here, towards the bottom, I'm going to drop in something darker. So if I pick up with very little water, if I pick up, say, some ultramarine blue and add a little bit of the red to it, I get a sort of pretty dark gray color. But keep it as dry as possible. And I'm going to just pop a few little marks at the base of what I've just put on there. And because it's all wet, it'll start to paint itself a little bit. I just want to sort of give it a little bit more emphasis of being darker at the bottom. You see what I've done here? Just a little bit darker at the bottom here than the rest of it. And I'm conscious of what is wet on my paper and what is dry. And let's see how that goes. There's a few little marks there. The light, remember, is coming from here, this from left to right. So maybe why don't I put a couple little drops on that side, which suggest the light. I don't want to make too much of this. It's the middle distance. It's going to get the stronger colors over the top of it. And yeah. Right, let's just leave that and see where we get to with that in a moment. Okay, I'm going to come in now and start. I think I'll show you my practice painting for this. I'm going to come in here and start putting some of these bits of bushes that might still be there. There's still bits of warmth in them, and the brown warmth. And a good thing about having warmth in a snow painting is that, to a certain extent, that when you put something warm down, what's next to it appears a bit cooler. Can you see these little brown marks I've got here? Well, they're warm, brown, ready sort of marks, and I put them in deliberately so that things appear cooler. Take a look at this Wesson painting. He's done the same here. These marks. He's put in some sort of warm colours which play against the coolness of the rest of it. So I'm using my little brush here. The colours that I think I'll play around with, let's get a little bit of, this is light red, this colour I'm using, which is very similar to this burnt sienna. Remember, I've already mentioned a raw sienna, which is a sort of more yellowy colour. This burnt sienna is a browner colour. It's got quite a lot of red in it. And this light red, which interestingly is a colour I've only really started to get interested in again, having dispensed with it some years ago. So I'm now going to make up. This is where I'm saying we're not absolutely copying a Wesson, but we're sort of taking bits out of other paintings. Let me put these two here, and let's put in some a little bit of red there. Be quite nice. There. I'm going to add some burnt umber. It's this color I'm mixing here, which is a dark warm red. Let's just put a little bit in there. And I'll deal with this side later on. Let's see how we get on with this side here. And some marks, and the sort of marks that Wesson's using, and you'll see me doing this very much when we start painting the trees. He uses very quick marks, often just a brush mark, and then he moves on, you know, like these ones, just a brush mark, and then moves on and doesn't overdo it there. So I've added a little bit of darker brown to that, and let's do some painting on the trees now.
Can you just revise those colours? Someone's saying, is it cadmium red and burnt umber?
Well, I didn't use cadmium red. I used a light red. I would suggest maybe a light red or a burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of blue, just to tone it down a little bit. These are quite strong. They'll appear quite strong, warm colours against what other things I'm putting in. I just wanted to drop some of those in at the moment. I'd be tempted, if I were painting this, to go across here and do this, but I'm kind of going to leave that and paint this, and then we'll come back to that area there. So I've popped in some colors here. Let's can change my brush now from that to a sword brush. Now, I don't know if you've got a sword brush. It's like a rigger, which is that one, but it's sort of got more body to it, but it goes to a fine point. It can be used for making very fine. You could use it for doing lettering if you wanted to, as indeed could you use this rigger. But you can also use it for making marks which are almost completely out of your control. So that's what I'm going to go into now here. I'm going to go into a little bit out of control in the way that I reckon Edward Wesson was probably a bit out of control here, and make some marks. So I'm using this sword brush. If you don't have one of these, then you could use a rigger, or you could use, if you've got a pointy one like this would be a little more difficult using that, but somehow you want to end up with a point. Let me show you what I'm planning on doing with this here. I quite often find that I've got a paint palette with colors in it, and I often just mix things in with them, see how they go. But I'm looking for some darker, maybe even brown colors here. So if I go back to my cobalt and mix that in with what I've got here, that's too blue at the moment for me. So I'm going to bring in a red. It could be burnt umber, could be burnt sienna, or could be light red. Let me just put in some light red. And I've gone to something which is quite brown. No, it's not brown enough. Let's just try and bring something a bit browner into that. A bit more ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue's got a lot of red in it anyway, so let's just see. A bit more ultramarine blue, and that's quite blue, a little bit of, okay, let's see. I've got something which is slightly on the reddy side, and here I'm aware that the light's coming from left to right, but you might have done it the other way around. That is fine. And so let's leave a little bit of the light shining. When you're making your marks down here with the snow is, just be aware that whatever you paint up to can suggest that there is some snow there. You'll see that when I'm making my marks here. So I'm going to leave these two paintings here just for a moment and put in some marks here. Let's just take that, and I can make my own tree up. Let's the thing you get with this brush is some very out of control but very fine lines. So can you see the way Wesson has used this brush? I reckon he had a brush like this, but we don't need to copy his tree precisely, but just making some marks. And I can take that now into the lights coming from the left, so maybe we're going to be seeing some shadow over to the right. Let's just play around with that for a bit more. I'll come up this tree. What's this tree look like in the painting? Okay, we come up here. So the way I'm using the brush is it's pretty difficult to get a straight line, but in fact, that's kind of what I don't want. Straight line, and a lot of it's so much to do with the pressure. I'm finding it's quite difficult to control, but I'm very happy with that at the moment. Let's he's got lots in this painting here, he's got lots of fine branches, so let's try and make them fine. This will dry lighter, and I may well be coming back over it a little bit here. A few little marks. Let's wonderful trees when they okay, we've got all of these bushes here which he's got in the distance, so let's put some of that down. A few little marks. very difficult to control these riggers, but then they are giving you some very interesting marks. Now, whilst these are wet here, if you want to emphasize, you know, for instance, I'd like to make one or two little bits in these bushes a little bit darker. So I'll go back to my ultramarine blue and maybe use something like burnt umber. And I'm going to make a dark, but with not almost no water at all in it, much darker color. And I'm just going to drop it in one or two areas here. In the same way as I drop some darkness here, and just bring it in. If I wanted to make it even darker, then the color that I've got in my palette here is called neutral tint. It's not black. But it's the closest I've got to black, and I could add a little bit of that into it to make it even darker. I don't think I will, but I might do so later on in the painting. You can see in both of his paintings that he's used something pretty dark here, and I might wait and see how it looks in the final step on that one. So I've popped in some of that to the trees. I may well come back to them. It's suggesting that there's light on that tree there. I think I'll, without getting glossy, I'm just going to add a bit of water there and just to soften a couple of these marks, so it's not all hard edged. Right. Okay. I will come back to that moment, but what I'm going to do now is put the shadows in. Well, let me just show you something. At this stage here, if I wanted to suggest that there were something light in front of it, you see, I've just made a little mark with my fingernail. I don't know whether you can see that. It's just a little mark. For this, I'm going to use the same sword brush you got here. There is another brush which is quite good for, it's called a hake. Oh, here we are, which I'm not using here. Is this brush. It's one of the brushes I use. And in fact, before Christmas, I did a little online snow scene, and I used this brush for the whole snow scene. I don't know if any of you were there, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to go into the shadows here. So I'm going to swap that around. That might be more useful to me here. The shadows, right. They're going to be quite blue. And I'll start off with cobalt. So I've started off with a cobalt color here. That's really much too strong blue, but it's not far off it. So cobalt and maybe a little bit of light red, just to grade down ever so slightly. Oh, have I done too much there? I don't know, maybe. I think that'll be fine. So I'm going to need quite a lot of paint for this. And I'm also going to have to be conscious that because the light's coming down here, this tree is going to be casting shadows, so is that one. There may well be something here that's out of view, which will sort of cast a shadow down here. I want to paint it in such a way that, because snow does flatten things off, but if it's been mucked around with people walking through it or dogs, it's also is going to be not completely flat the whole way. So I'll use this color, but I may well come in and add something darker to it. In fact, I'll make it ever so slightly bluer, I think. Yeah. And I'll take take it like this. So here we go. So we got a sort of shadow. Is that going to be, I think that'll be fine. So it's the sort of shadow of that tree comes down here. Because there's a drop in the ditch, let's just put something here. You're kind of trusting that this brush is going to help you out and give you some interesting marks. And if I could sit here all day long and try and plan these marks out, and I never get them looking as sort of loose as this is. Let's just take it down here. So maybe we've got, someone's been down here. Someone's been down here, maybe. So we'll put some.
Can you repeat the shadow colours, please, Mike?
Well, it's cobalt. I've used cobalt and light red, but it could be burnt sienna. It could be burnt umber. I've just toned it down a little bit. I'm going to pretend there's something going on down here a bit more. So let's just bring a bit more shadow down here. I obviously want to leave enough snow there for it to look a snow scene, and I've run out of paint. So let's just bring in some more water, some more cobalt. I use cobalt. That's too strong a blue. Brought in a little bit of light red. Okay, what have I got there? Let's take something up here. And then there's a bank here, isn't there, that we were talked about right at the start. So let's suggest something there. I'm going to take. Let's go back to. I'm going to a bit more down here. All right. Now, whilst I'm at it, this tree, I want to leave because the tree is slightly further away. It's not going to be as broken up, the shadow is here. It's going to be slightly longer, but thinner here. But I also want to leave that space that I'm pointing out at the end of my brush here to suggest that there is some snow there. And here I think I'll leave that. I don't want to put too many shadows in there because it's all making it seem as if it's far away. Let's see if we can bring in some. Now, whilst it's all a bit wet, it's all very even, those shadows. So let me see. I've got a mauve color here, which is ultramarine and crimson. I'll tell you what, I'll use ultramarine and crimson in case you haven't got mauve. Bit of mauve, but really important. Ultramarine, really important. I just want to bring something warmth in here, that you're using very strong colors. There's almost no water in that. Otherwise, you're going to get your cabbages. Okay, so I'm just touching nearby a little bit of, particularly over this side, a little bit of warmth. Yeah, a little bit of warmth. And here, I'll add some ultramarine blue to my snow shadows. Oh, way too dark, way too brown. And again, not much I want to be careful. I don't want to end up with cauliflowers here. So let's just make that strong, almost completely paint. I'm just dropping in up the top here, and maybe in where things might be a little bit darker. Or maybe I'll wait. I'll wait and do that when. No, I'll do that in the details. Yeah, I don't want to end up with you all having cauliflowers in your pictures. Right. That's probably all the shadows in the snow that I want to do. What I might do is do that tree when I come back to doing details. Let's just see if there's anything else I want to put in the room. How are we doing on time? An hour and a half. Yeah, I think that's as far as I go. So don't stop the recording yet, Lois, but I think I will, when I come back, I know I'll revisit these trees, put in whatever details. I just want to put a couple of little smidge details in the middle distance here. This tree, I'm going to revisit. If I show you what I did with my practice painting, I'm going to come back to that. And any other little details, any other little marks that I think will help to pull it. The fourth step is all about pulling the whole thing together. It needs something here stronger, I think, because there's these trees got to visually unbalance compositionally the picture. We can deal with that. So this is the third step. Sorry, it's fourth step, and of the four that I was talking about at the start, and I think I just generally refer to this as details, but it is very much about pulling the picture together, pulling everything together from the drawings, the wash, and what we've just done in the third step is making it all work. So I'm looking at this. Let's look at a couple of these Western paintings here and see what help they might be to me. And he was presumably painting these pretty swiftly, and we've slowed this down. So he very much uses strong values, as I mentioned right at the start, and plays them against each other. So I'm pointing now at this area in his painting, and you can see how the drama, the difference in the light and dark between the background, which he's made very dark, helps to make the foreground snow stand out and work really well. And he's used that in a number of other areas down here. Let's have a look at this one. So here he's used it very much. He's used different colors. This is a sort of, I think, probably a brighter snow scene than the one I'm painting, but he's maybe even darkened up some of these areas to make the snow appear a little more white and vibrant. So that's something I'm going to bear in mind. How we're going to use that here. I quite like this idea of bringing some darkness in here. I'm going to revisit the trees a little bit and where I think necessary, just make something of them. But going to the background, do I want to leave that as it is? I think I'm just going to do something here, and I'll show you what I have in mind. And what am I going to do here? I don't know whether I want to bring something, but certainly I'm going to do this tree. And And also one or two other little details. Let's come back to my practice painting. I felt that just some suggestion here on the right. Well, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll use some posts or something as a compositional thing to break up the landscape the feeling of it going away from you. And I've added some sort of fencing here. I've also added, as he had done in this one, I've added some I'd broken up bits of obviously bits of ground, roots or something showing through, and maybe there's the old place I want to touch in something a bit darker on the shadows to suggest that there is a little bit of drop and fall in what's going on here. All the time I'm bearing in mind that the light's coming in my painting from the left to the right. Okay, I'll go to this middle distance here and see what I can achieve there. I just want to put a little bit of detail in there, but without overcooking it too much. So I'm going to there was something I saw in his yeah, if we look at this bit of his painting here, you can see that he's suggested that there's some sort of trees and some branches there. Oh no, this is probably a better one here. If you see that, can you see he's sort of suggested there's some trees coming up, darker at the base here, and just some suggestion of wisps of branches up there. So I think I'll do something like that here and see what I can get away with. So for that, I'm going to use my rigger, and just move some of these out of the way for the moment. Yeah, we go. And all of these colors may be a bit too dark for me at the moment for what I'm doing. So let's clear a space, and I'll go to the blue I started off with, cerulean blue. Let's put a little bit of cerulean. Well, it's way too bright for what I want. So a little bit of something red to grey it down a bit more. Something like that maybe. And this is the sort of thing I'm going to do, just to remind you. I'm going to play around with some suggestion of, this might even be slightly in the foreground. So how has he done that? Let's just have a look. I'm using my rigger brush on its side and just touching the paper. If you're using rough paper, you'll get even sort of rougher marks. So the smoother your paper, less so, but I'm just using a few little marks like that. Let's add a little bit of darkness to that. And it's just a few little marks, possibly suggesting. That's all it is. That's as far as I think I'll take it. So that very, very subtle, just marks there. Very much using the edge of the brush. I'm going to be doing something like that again in a moment up here with this tree. Go back to my practice with this tree here. Okay, but what I'm doing there is pretty much what I've just done there, but I've just done it much more subtly. And do I want to make any I'm just making one or two sort of slightly darker marks there, which is suggesting the ridge, if you like, the horizon, where as far as we can see the snow, just one or two little marks. Okay, if I do too much, I think I'll bring it forward too much here. So I'm going to do this tree now, and then the rest of it to work in with the tree. Remember, I said you so often respond to what you've done in a painting. So I think I'll put this tree in and see what I need to do here to make it work. So it's well, it doesn't matter. We don't have to do the same tree as that, but it's. I think right at the start, I felt it was a compositional thing, which was quite useful there. And I'm going to my sword brush. See, we'll keep this fairly dark. So some ultramarine blue. Yeah.
Someone's asked me what size sword brush you're using.
All right. Well, unfortunately, it's long since lost the numbers on it, but I have got another one here, which is bigger. And the bigger one is 3/8 of an inch. From a firm called Rosemary, but you'll get them from many different people. This is a squirrel, but I think imitation squirrel is pretty good as well. So the one I'm using is less than 3/8, and I don't know what that is. So you can see the difference between the two of them, can you? Let's just make this one wet. Oh, they're both wet. Sometimes they're called daggers. Okay. So I've got some French ultramarine, and I'm going to add some burnt umber to that. I mean, could be any brown or anything, but I'm just going for a sort of darker, sludgier color. Right. Make that a bit stronger. And the tree, what shall I go for? You can make up your own tree. So let's just, oh, it's gone all over the place, that tree. Let's put some branches. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm using this smaller of my dagger brushes, because it's just a bit okay. But I want to get a feel for, I don't know whether it's leaves or anything like that. So I'm going to go to my rigger, just pick up some paint there, and very much using the brush on its side. And I don't want an awful lot here. Let's put something like that. If you wanted to, what this is still wet on the page. If you wanted to just add something a bit darker to it, I'm not sure I do, but I'll just touch it in a couple of places and just add a bit of, okay, and we'll and I think I'll take a few branches out to those. Right. So however fine or otherwise you want to do that, there's that statement of the tree, and what's going on at the bottom of it. I'll come back there. I'm going to work on these ones now. I'm going back to my dagger, And see, if I've been doing it with lots of leaves on, you can see how Wesson has made those sorts of marks, but he's varied them. There's a bit of green and brown in it and all that sort of thing. Well, and here as well. Well, in this case, we haven't got any leaves really. So I don't know what I'm doing putting those on, but I not all trees lose their leaves. So let's just do that. So I'm coming on here now, going back to my dagger. I do want some dark colors, and I'm definitely going to use French ultramarine. I'll probably use burnt umber. It's not a vastly different color from burnt sienna, but I think I may well drop in some neutral tint, or if you've got it Payne's grey, to get some dark areas. And let's see where we go from there. So let's mix up something dark and sludgy and quite strong in pigment as well. So add some burnt umber to that. That's gone really. I'm going to put a little bit of light red with that. Back to some burnt umber. So that's quite dark we've got here. Let's see if that's going to be dark enough. Is that going to make a statement? Yeah, I think that's fine. So rather than go over the whole of what I've done before, I'm just finding little accents to emphasize the nature of this tree. Just one or two little bits, maybe down here. I've always liked, where's that picture gone? This one. I've always liked this shadow that comes across here. And it's one of the reasons why someone asked me this question. I think now it's one of the reasons why I've gone for having the light coming from that side. So let's see if we can put that shadow in. I think we'll make this a little bit darker just here. That's a bit too much water on my brush. And we'll have a shadow coming from there, shall we? I've just got water in my brush now, and I can take that. I wonder if it was worth it. I've just taken water on that and let it trail down. Okay, fair enough. There we are. Pleases an old man. Right. I want to make that stronger. It's often at this stage where you are using quite strong, not always dark, but often dark colors. That's I'm thinking compositionally. Do I want to change anything about the trees? It's quite nice in this painting of his how he's got this branch going all the way across here, but I don't know really whether I want to do that. Let's just make it go across a little bit more. Okay, and some sort of a little fence there. Right, I think I'll bring some of that darkness down into the shadow there a little bit. Now, how about doing something like that here? It's one of the reasons why I moved that tree over. I should maybe have moved it over a little bit more. So let's do that. Let's see whether we don't mess it up. Okay, we'll have so having painted that little bit of dark there, it's and left these little bits of red here, it helps to, I was talking about, you've got one thing in front of another, you know, just as Wesson has put the snow in front of the darkness here. I talk about values all the time, light against dark and dark against light. Well, I've put that there deliberately.
Can you revise those colours you've just used, please?
I've used ultramarine blue and burnt umber. But I may well be dropping a little bit of neutral tinting. I'm going to take, I want the light to shine. It's coming from left to right. I want it to shine on this tree a little bit more. So if I take this up against the edge of it a little bit, it just helps that to happen. What do I want to do here? I don't think I'll do quite as much as he's done because I'm running out of space, but just something like that. And I'm going to take that across to here a little bit. And make this mound stand out. I don't know if you've seen what I've done there. I'm he's got this great big sort of bush here. I don't think I'm going to put that much in, but I'll put something in. Okay, that's there. Let's just bring some of that into the snow. Now I want to bring some colors into the snow, but I don't want them to be as dark. That's much too dark for the moment. I didn't put any neutral tint in. That's I said I would, so I will do it. Let's pop a little bit in there. Just make that. Okay, now I want to bring in some darker tones to this snow. So let's bring in some cobalt blue, because I use that for the shadows, and bring in some light red, a bit more cobalt blue. Yes, something like that. I wonder if that's going to do it. Now we've got the light coming down here, and I'm looking at various marks that Ciego has made there. Let's pop in. This is just a little bit. The light's coming down here, so we can. I don't know if this is dark enough. Okay. So as things go away from you, you're going to see less of the variation in shadows and so forth. But Is that going to be enough, I wonder? Just a few marks to go. Again, remember the snow flattens things out a bit. I'm going to just use the finger to soften some of those. Okay, maybe that's enough for that at the moment. And let's come back here to see where I go with that. Do I want to? I was talking about putting some fences in here. Do I want to make that a little more busy? This is very much a compositional thing. My feeling is that I do want to make it a bit busier. Okay. Right, let's do it so we can see if we can. I'm going to go to my back earlier in the painting. I used this yellow ochre to get this sort of color, so I'm going to go back there and all right, so I've popped that in there, and now I'll pick up something darker. This is what I did before when I did these bits here. Let's just pick up some of that and put that there and just hope that kind of paints itself. Yeah, it'll sort of paint itself with a bit of luck. Fence posts. What should I use for that? I get a bit of. Oh, it's gone. I think it's gone too brown. Bring it back with a bit of ultramarine blue. Okay, something like that. And what should we do? Something there. I want to liven this tree up a little bit, as I did the other one. So use selective darker bits. Yeah, it's just livened it up a bit, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm wondering whether I should finish it off there. What's that little yellow spodge doing there? Let's see if we can do something with that. And Wesson, and I mentioned it to you before, has brought in some little warm marks there, hasn't he? So let's do just that. I'm going to pick up something red, light red, or something from here. You can see I'm just picking up something red. And where shall I make these marks? Again, like so many of these things, you kind of don't want to, just a few little marks. just that little bit of warmth, maybe. And do I want to add a little bit of darkness to them? Maybe at the bottom. Yeah, just those few little marks. So let's sit back and try and see whether we've got what I want. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll have to do. I think if I do too much more to it, it will detract really from the focus is very much on that. And this is balancing it compositionally, as I said earlier. Yes. So what I've tried to do is not overstate that. It's telling the story of the land going away from you, but it's covered in snow. My focus is very much on this in the painting, but I had to have something there to balance that. But overall, the feel is of a sort of cold, flat, snowy winter's day. There is some warmth in the sky that's sort of lingering around, but it's probably going to be going soon. And the snow that I had here, remember we actually painted some sort of blue over it. Well, but hopefully that blue is working as some coolness, but it's not. It's still allowing the snow to come through. I think, Lois, I've got that stage where I really can't think of anything else I need to do this. It may well be that I'll go away and have a cup of tea and come back and say, oh, I just need to make a couple of marks. But I don't think so. I mean, now would be a good time to stop. There are pencil marks on this. I won't rub them now because the paint's still a little bit wet, but you can get rid of them a little bit later on. So what I would like to do now is just quickly recap on what we've done whilst you're continuing with your painting, and then leave it for you to finish off. We started off. Usually I use a photograph as a source picture. I very rarely use a painting, but I just felt in this case, why didn't we use a Wesson painting and then go ahead and change it? Because the whole thing is about learning something from Edward Wesson and his way of painting. So that was the source, and pretty much what I have seen in here, particularly this tree here, I've made use of compositionally, but we have this bank here. I changed the light around. Someone asked a very good question, why did I do that? And I think it was something to do with this shadow, but it didn't seem to work very well, but it matters not. But I think maybe my main reason for doing it is because I mentally, I just wanted to turn this around and not get bogged down, not follow this slavishly. I mean, well, we've used it quite strongly, but not entirely this. So we then tried to change the season, go to winter, having put the wash on and got the feeling of the light, the softness that you get with the snow. We then came into the third stage, which was bringing the colours, looking at how we're going to deal with this. And even when I dealt with this, I came back later on and did some more to it in the final stage, which is fine. Put quite a lot of the shadows on the tree, but not all of them. Pretty much all the shadows on the ground, but again, not all of them in that case. And then stood back and looked at it and thought, now what do I need to bring this together? And then did that in the final stages. Now, if say you'd got to this stage and you wanted to add something more to it. Now, for instance, let's go back to my thing. Say you wanted to bring some sort of yellow you can see I've got it in my practice painting here. So you wanted to bring some yellow back here, which might not be a bad idea. The Wesson's done that. He's done that with some yellow there. He's done it there. I mean, there's nothing stop you, and I'm sure he would have done that. Just pick up your brush and prop some yellow in there, as the way I did here. It might be a good idea, but I'm not going to do it. But were I to do it, I'd just use a little brush like this and mix up some of that yellow ochre, get some yellow ochre and just pop it down there a little bit. But I think I've got to that point in the painting where leave it alone. Go away and have a drink a cup of tea and then take a look at it and see what more you need to do to it.